Restoring old images with Photoshop is a very popular pastime. In Photoshop CS3, Adobe has introduced the Clone Source palette, which is going to help you with restoration and retouching work. If you don't see the Clone Source palette on your desktop, simply go to the word Window and drag down to Clone Source. What the Clone Source palette lets you do is define multiple sources for both the healing brush and the clone stamp tool. In this instance, I need to clean up the mold from the grass, the basketball, and the little girl's arm. In order to keep the cleanup on a separate layer, add a new layer. Got my healing brush active. We can choose, do we want the cleanup to use all layers or just the current layer, which of course is empty, or current and below? I find it very easy to use all layers, even though there's an adjustment layer. By clicking on the adjustment layer icon when it's dark, the clone and the healing brush will not take the adjustment layer into account. This is a very welcomed improvement to CS3. I'm going to Option-Alt-Click, sample some good grass, and clean up some of that mold. Now I want to create a new clone source of a new texture. I go to the Clone Source palette, click on the second clone source, and now I'm going to clean up some of the mold on the basketball. And I always do a little bit and then let go of the mouse and let the healing brush do its job. If I hold down the space bar and scroll over, I can see there's still mold in the grass. I don't need to define a new clone source. Simply come, that was my first clone source, and I can keep working. The ability to have multiple clone sources can really speed up your retouching and restoration work. I'm going to start a third clone source, clean up some of the mold on the arm. And of course, if we took a few more minutes, I could clean up the mold of the entire image. All in all, the Clone Source palette lets you work better and smarter when cleaning up images. And one last little tip, you can clone from one image to a different image using the Clone Source palette. That's something that I find very, very exciting. Now let's open up retouch.jpg to learn about additional features of the Clone Source palette. This image, I'd like to take out the dark circles under the woman's eyes with the healing brush. I'm going to start by adding a new layer, have all my retouching on a separate layer. Got the healing brush active, and I'm going to click on Show Overlay. When you have the Show Overlay, you notice you get this double image. When I Option-Alt-Click, I can choose my source, release Option-Alt-Click, and then I can actually see exactly what Photoshop is cloning and healing from. That can be very useful, especially when you get very close to lighter or darker areas. To automatically turn the overlay off, you would click the Auto Hide. This is how I work with this tool, because I Option-Alt-Click, and then when I retouch, the overlay disappears and I can concentrate on what I'm doing. To exit the overlay, you can uncheck it and then admire your retouching.